Hello, lovely ones. My name is Kimberly Benjamin Houdevin, and I want to welcome you to Take 10. I call it Take 10. It's taking 10 minutes of tips to decide if your marriage is worth saving. So in this Take 10 series, I'm going to go through a variety of different topics that you can use to begin to evaluate and get clarity on whether you can recommit to your marriage, whether you want to recommit to your marriage, and how you can do that, and whether it's time for you to finally pull up all of that beautiful courage that you have and create that new life that you want. I call myself a relationship alchemist because, an alchemist is someone who takes bits and pieces of base metals and brings them together to create gold. And of course, that's magical. But what happens when you begin to do some of this thought work? Your life becomes magical. So together with you, we work on your relationship with you. We bring in all of those bits and pieces that you think are lost or broken, that you think you can't get back. And we work on those and we bring golden into your life so that you have the life that you want to live. So I don't work with your husband and I don't work with couples. I just work with the most important relationship, and that's the relationship that you have with yourself. And so today we're going to talk about 3 specific things that we have a tendency to do as women, and we don't really understand why it works out the way that it does. And I'm going to explain that to you a little bit. Interestingly enough, I even have a personal example. So say we want to communicate something to our husband. Say we want to have a conversation. Have you ever done that? Like you said, we need to talk. And immediately you can kind of see all the defenses coming down, and he's totally shut us out. So this is how we want to think about sharing our heart and sharing our feelings. First off, it's perfect timing because I had a client I was working with just a couple of days ago, and she shared this. So common. We don't understand. We feel like we're doing all the work. She shared with me, she's like, I'm just so tired of doing all the work. I feel like I have to do everything. I ask him how he's feeling, and he says nothing, literally nothing. And I'm like having to drag conversation out of him. She said, it's so much easier talking to a girlfriend. I ask her a question, I ask her how she's feeling, and the conversation flows. And I just had to smile because I could see myself and every woman I've ever worked with. And here's what's going on. We are talking to our husbands like they're women, and they're not, obviously. But of course it's easy when we're talking to a girlfriend because that's how we naturally, instinctively connect. We connect by sharing our heart, by sharing our dreams and how we're feeling and what we're thinking. But have you ever hung out and listened to guys talk, like even having really serious conversations, like sharing deep, meaningful things? They're rarely talking about their feelings. You can ask your husband, say, how are you feeling today? Or are you feeling okay? And if you pay attention, you'll notice him going, yes, I'm good. I'm fine. I'm happy. Why? Because he automatically assumes that we're going to try to drag him into some emotional conversation that he's not prepared for. Because, men compartmentalize things, whereas we as women have like a thicker cerebral cortex between our hemispheres. So that's why we're better at multitasking. So everything kind of gets all mixed up and goes back and forth. And it all comes back to how we're feeling. But here's a little secret. The way we feel about something first begins with our thoughts. So even when we're asking our husband how he's feeling, very often what's going on inside of us is we're trying to test out the waters to see how he's feeling about something because we want to share something with him. Or we're feeling uncertain about his feelings, how he's feeling about us, how he's feeling about our marriage. This is always a biggie, the big conversation. We want to ask them well, so what do you think about our marriage? Well, how are you feeling towards me? And you know what? They're not going to be prepared to answer questions like that. And unfortunately, they're not going to give us the answers that we're looking for. So what I advise my clients to do, here's 3 tips. Number 1 is get really, really, really clear about what you want to communicate to your husband. And what I mean by that is, what are you asking from him? What is it that you want back from him? Because we have an expectation, as women, especially if it's an emotional conversation, because we're very distraught or we're very upset about something. And what we want back from him is either affirmation or validation, or we want him to tell us that he loves us, or we want him to tell us that everything is okay, or that he's happy that he married us, or we want him to tell us that he's going to do X, Y, and Z. But we're not as direct as men are. We have a tendency to go around it through the emotional sort of circuitry, and that throws them off. So what happens very often is we end up miscommunicating with one another. I did this with my ex-husband all the time, and I would rehearse what I wanted to say to him, and he never followed the script. And what I realized years later was that in my efforts to try to communicate how I was feeling, what came across for me was that I was telling him that he was doing something wrong. So inevitably, I would have this great concept of how I was going to share my feelings with him, and it would turn into this huge argument, and I would be so confused. And that's because I wasn't really clear on what I wanted from him. And I wasn't asking specifically or directly for what I wanted from him. And part of that was because I was afraid to. I didn't feel confident in asking those things. And that's the reason that I work with women on the relationship that you have with you, because when you feel confident about what you're asking for and you get really, really clear about it, you'll be able to step back and see, like, okay, what is it I'm expecting from him? What is it I need from him? So number one is get really, really clear. Clear about how you're feeling, clear about what your expectations for the conversation are. And I want to encourage you to think about point number two is to talk about one thing at a time. You know, we also have a tendency as women to say always or never, or you used to, or you don't anymore. And men hear that as some sort of, again, being accusatory. And that's not what we're saying, and that's not what we mean. And when we talk to other women that way, we instinctively know, like, well, of course she's not saying I always or I never. I mean, we talk in generalities, and men typically don't. They typically talk more specifically and more logically and more linear. So think about what you want specifically, what you want to convey to him specifically. Let me give you a metaphor. Say we're going shopping, okay? Say it was just a bunch of girlfriends, we're just going out shopping, but we're not shopping for anything specific. So we'll look around because, you know, we like pretty things. And we may find something we like. We may find 10 things that we like. Or we may find nothing that we like. And we're okay with that, you know? See, men are more direct. Like when they go shopping, it's for a specific item. They go straight to it in the store and they bring it home, all right? They've conquered it. We're not like that. But now when we're shopping for something, like say you need a pair of shoes for a particular event, then we're very specific. We know exactly what we want them to look like. We know what color we want. We know what heel height we want. And that's the kind of information that is easier for men to digest. Now, I'm not telling you to change who you are. I'm just telling you to think more specifically. Think about asking for a specific pair of shoes for a specific event. So if you can get really clear, number one, on what you want, and then number two, if you can articulate that in more specific terms, it's going to be easier for him to hear. And the only reason that matters is not for him, but for you. Because if you're anything like I was, I would have these conversations and they would go south so badly that I was in worse pain than I was before I started the conversation. So these are just a couple little tips that you can use, which will bring us into tip number three. This is sometimes the hardest to do. Personally, I've had this experience, and all of my clients experience this. If we're wanting to share something with our husband and we're particularly emotional about it, we want an automatic, immediate answer. Because there's something, like I said, that we want from the conversation. So we want him to answer us. We want him to engage with us. We want him to go back and forth. And we want him to say something to us like right now. That's why it's important to know what it is we want and to be very specific about it. But the third thing is we have to release our expectation of the outcome. Because you see, our part is to be confident enough in who we are to ask for what we want. And that's a challenge for us sometimes as women. But the other part of that is to allow him to be who he is. And men have a tendency, especially if it's an emotional or a heavy conversation, to need time to process. As women, because we're feeling something very deeply and we need something at that moment, if we don't get it, we get very discouraged and we make it mean something about us. And that's what makes it hard to detach from the outcome. And here's a perfect example. This happened just today. So my husband and I both work from home, and I went downstairs and he was downstairs in the kitchen. And he was like, I turned all this off. And I was like, what do you mean? Well, I turned the oven off and I turned the fan off and I turned the light off. And I was like, okay, high five, congratulations. You see, because what he was trying to tell me was, you forgot to turn these things off. And I was detached from that. Okay, because see, that was about him. And that's what happens when we have conversations. Now, in my marriage to my ex-husband, that probably would have turned into a fight. Because I probably then would have gotten defensive and I would have said, yeah, well, it's only on because I made lunch for you and I brought it to you and blah, blah. And I would have gone to all this rationalization to defend myself. But you see, I didn't feel the need to defend myself. It's like, okay, I forgot to turn the light off. I forgot to turn the oven off. It's like nothing caught on fire. It was for an hour. It'll be okay. So that's what I mean when I say detach from the outcome, detach from what he says to you, because what he says to you really is about him. It's not about you. So don't make it mean rejection. Don't make it mean that you're not valuable, that you're not loved, that you're not important, or that what you said isn't important. Because if you can allow him to be him and you can let go of it, very often he'll come back later after he's had time to process it. Now, that's not a guarantee. It doesn't mean when we ask for something that we're automatically going to get it. That's the other part we have to understand. Our part is to be open and honest, to be respectful and kind, but to ask for what we need. We can't demand it because we have to give them the freedom to say no. And if they say no, we have to decide what we're going to make that mean about us. And that's all for today, beautiful one. Just know that you are worthy, that you do deserve love, and that you can have it, I promise. And it is magical when you begin to use these tools. So if this was helpful, please drop me a line at kim@themarriagemythcure.com. Let me know, ask questions, give me your input. Check out my website, themarriagemythcure.com. There's lots of freebies there. I will put the link underneath this video. I will also put the link for the private Facebook group, fabulous group of kick-ass women that are in this same plight together. Great support, great community, and I encourage you to join it. Like I said, I look forward to getting to know you better, and check out the rest of the Take 10 series. I'll be adding to those regularly with little bits and pieces of things that you can do. Because when you begin to employ these things to communicate, it will give you an understanding of whether the two of you can come together once again to create something new in your relationship, to reconnect, to build that bridge. It may not ever be like it was once before, but that's okay. You aren't the person that you used to be. So this is a chance for you to see if this relationship and this connection is what you want for the rest of your life. And know deep down inside that when you do these things, you will be confident about leaving if that is your choice. And for today, I'm going to say bisous from Orléans, France. À tout à l'heure.